Well, welcome to the 700 Club. I join with those who are mourning the death of a legal giant, as a dear friend, a friend of Regent, a man who lectured at Regent University, gave freely of his time, met with us on several occasions. A delightful man, a man of great accomplishments, who was the swing vote. At least he was the intellectual leader of the conservative wing of the Supreme Court of the United States. And now a political battle is underway about who's going to replace him. Wendy?
That's right. His death during an election year brings another important issue to this year's presidential race. Jennifer Wishon has that story from Washington.
As Justice Antonin Scalia's family and the nation prepare to lay him to rest, a judicial jostle has already begun in Washington and on the campaign trail. The 2016 presidential candidates are already drawing lines over what should happen next. Republican candidates say President Obama should not nominate a Supreme Court justice in an election year.
Barack Obama would ram down our throat a liberal justice.
It's called delay, delay, delay.
Despite his lame duck status, President Obama says it's his duty to name a new justice.
I plan to fulfill my constitutional responsibilities to nominate a successor in due time.
A plan both remaining Democrats running for president support.
It is the job of the President of the United States to appoint, nominate members to the Supreme Court, and the Senate confirms.
Barack Obama is President of the United States until January 20th, 2017.
But Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the Senate will not confirm the president's nominee. Instead, the body will wait to consider whoever President Obama's successor nominates. Scalia's death sets up a referendum in this presidential election on the future direction of the Supreme Court. And with 3 justices over the age of 75, it's likely the next president will fill other vacancies during his or her tenure in the White House.
Place your left hand on the Bible.
Both sides agree that the man appointed to the court nearly 3 decades ago by President Ronald Reagan was brilliant, larger than life, and perhaps the most important justice of his era.
His impact on the court was incomparable. As Ronald Reagan was to the presidency, so Justice Scalia was to the court.
His example of judicial conservatism survives, along with his legal interpretation that uses the meaning of the words of the Constitution at the time they were written by the founders. His writings on the High Court were admired by the greatest legal minds and ordinary Americans, like when he accused his colleagues of engaging in interpretive jiggery-pokery when they ruled in favor of Obamacare. Scalia also held fast to his devout Catholic faith.
He was a man of deep, personal Christian faith.
Now, without him, the court will confront a heavy load this year in cases that could result in a 4-4 tie.
Some of the most important cases we're facing as a nation are before this court this term: religious freedom, abortion, immigration.
Scalia, known as Nino to family and friends, leaves behind his wife Maureen, 9 children, many grandchildren, and a tremendous judicial and legal legacy. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
You know, I had the privilege of reading some of the dissents. There was an article yesterday in the paper. The dissents were monumental and, you know, really very telling, and I'm sure have gotten a major play in our American jurisprudence. Well, with us now is the Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow. Jay, what's his legacy? It's hard to define, isn't it?
Well, I think he was the conservative resurgence of the Supreme Court of the United States. You know, Pat, you and I both known Justice Scalia for a quarter of a century, and I've appeared before him for 25 years, and I consider him a friend and also just a tremendous intellect. So the legacy of Antonin Scalia is that he brought a conservative intelligence to the court that had not been seen in decades. He brought a perspective with both his questioning and with his pen that I think clearly, without a doubt, is going to affect generations to come. This was, I think, one of our great champions we've lost. I get a little bit emotional about this. Look, he was a guy that took on the majorities when those famous Scalia dissents, and took them on head on. And it never impacted his personal relationship with those that he disagreed with. You know, his closest friend on the Supreme Court is Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They called each other their best buddies. And so he never made it personal, but he certainly understood the importance of the framers' intent of the Constitution, and he applied it that way. And I will say, in all of the cases we've had, Pat, which are probably close to 20 now, he always ruled in our favor. Even when it was the dissent, he was ruling in our favor.
You know, there's a split now in constitutional interpretation. One says the Constitution is a living document, and it should be applied in relation to the sociological norms of the current era. Scalia said no. It's a question of what did the words mean when they were written. And that's what the Constitution says, and if we don't like it, we've got to amend it according to the rules. How are we going to ever get somebody like him? He is so unique.
Well, Scalia, look, Scalia was the originalist. I mean, Scalia did not believe in this living Constitution. He believed it was a living document in the sense that you could amend it through a constitutional process. He's going to be a hard person to fill, Pat. Excuse me. He, in a very real way, he changed the direction of the court for generations. Excuse me. And I think it's a tough replacement. It's not going to be easy.
All right, Jay, there have been several people. One of them is an Indian. He actually was born in India, and he's been put up as a potential. A number of them seem to be sitting on the D.C. circuit. What do you think? I mean, is Obama going to put somebody up and then we'll have a big clash? Mr. McConnell says, no way. I think he's right. They shouldn't rush somebody on until the next president. What do you think?
I think Obama's going to put somebody up, but I think the Senate Judiciary Committee just has to say no. The precedent's there for this, Pat. There hasn't been a confirmation when there's been an appointment during an election year since 1880. So this idea, sure, the president has the constitutional right to nominate, but the Senate has the right of advice and consent. It's not what Bernie Sanders said, which is this idea that you simply, the president appoints and you confirm. That's not the way the law is. So I think the fight has to be non-existent. The Republicans in the Senate in this last year of a presidency, even less than a year, have to just say no.
You know,
I noticed
the
people of America have a voice in this.
I noticed that there's some literature. One of the Democratic groups really wrote a memo saying that a president within the last year of his term in an election year should not appoint. Have you run across that where the Democrats actually said that?
Well, I haven't seen the Democratic memo on it. I'm just looking at history. And history says since 1880, Rutherford B. Hayes, no one has had an appointment and confirmation in the last year of their presidency. And here, Pat, we're talking about the last, 11 and a half months. So this idea that somehow the president, sure, he has the right to do it. I expect he's going to make a nominee, appoint a nominee. The Republicans need to say no. It's that simple. Just say no. That's the way the rules are structured. The Senate has a role in this. Constitution says advice and consent. The advice here is don't put up a nominee when you're not only going to be the president. You're lame duck and you're only the president for 11 months.
Jay, there's some key cases, though, before the court right now. Yeah. And a 4-4 tie means that the decision of the circuit court stands. So what are some that Scalia would have been the balance on, that would have flipped it one way or the other?
Well, the Little Sisters of the Poor, which is perhaps one of the biggest ones, the contraceptive mandate applied to the nuns, is probably a 5-4 case that now gives a 4-4 tie, which means an affirmance. Now, that will work to the advantage, perhaps, in some of the executive action overreach cases where there's a 4-4 tie would be an affirmance, and the Fifth Circuit made the right decision. But I think of other cases, the McDonald case, that a 4-4 tie there would be an affirmance. So there you look at some big cases. I mean, you're talking some of the biggest cases left. And by the way, Pat, those decisions that have not come out yet, even if Justice Scalia voted, those decisions haven't been issued. If you're not on the court the date that it's issued, the vote doesn't count. So the ramifications of this are really, really significant.
Well, we just pray. You mentioned McDonnell. He's the governor of Virginia, and he had a rehearing of all of his criminal conviction by the court. And it seemed to all the world that he was going to prevail on a 5-4 vote. Now, you think it might split 4-4?
Well, I think there's still a vote there. I think there's a couple of the left of center justices that have been concerned about the statute as well. But like a laser beam, that's who needs to be focused on right now, because the great champion on the ridiculous nature of the application of the whole corruption statute as to in the McDonnell case, the great champion of saying the statute is out of control was Antonin Scalia. I mean, this is a huge loss for the American people. This is, you know, and what a huge loss for his family. You know, I think about Maureen. I think he's 27 grandchildren, and he's got a great family. But this is the country should be in mourning. We are in mourning. We've lost a real champion. This is like losing a president that has served you well. You know, some have said Ronald Reagan was the conservative resurgence in the White House, and Antonin Scalia, who Reagan appointed, was the conservative resurgence of the Supreme Court.
Man, Jay, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, I join
Pat.
with Jay. We mourn his passing. He was a good friend and a wonderful guy, very approachable. We had a lovely time when he came to Regent. He taught the students. He actually carried on seminars where there was an interchange with the students. The students loved him. A wonderful man, brilliant scholar. Well, the Republican presidential candidates had a moment of silence for Justice Scalia in their battle, and then the gloves came off. You know, the presence of Donald Trump in this thing, when I was involved in politics some years ago, there was a rule. It was called the 11th Commandment, thou shalt not speak ill of a fellow Republican. That commandment has been shredded by Donald Trump. John Jessup has that story.
That's right, Pat. No such rule today. The GOP candidates really went after each other on a range of issues, from the economy to immigration to terrorism. Gary Lane brings us the highlights.
Saturday night's GOP debate was arguably the liveliest yet. The gloves were off. Donald Trump took on Cruz and Bush. Cruz took on the Donald and Rubio. Things got a bit personal when Trump went after Jeb Bush's brother and family. Bush fired back.
While Donald Trump was building a reality TV show, my brother was building a security apparatus to keep us safe, and I'm proud of what he did.
The World Trade Center came down during your brother's reign.
Remember
that.
Marco Rubio defended President Bush.
The World Trade Center came down because Bill Clinton didn't kill Osama bin Laden when he had the chance to kill him.
Cruz took on Trump over Planned Parenthood.
For most of his life, he has described himself as very pro-choice and as a supporter of partial birth abortion. Right now, today, as a candidate, he supports federal taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. I disagree with him on that. That's a matter of principle, and I'll tell you.
You are the single biggest liar. You probably are worse than Jeb Bush.
And Cruz criticized Rubio for his previous positions on immigration reform.
Marco went on Univision in Spanish and said he would not rescind President Obama's illegal executive amnesty on his first day in office.
For a number of weeks now, Ted Cruz has just been telling lies. Right. He lied about Ben Carson in Iowa. He lies about Planned Parenthood. He lies about marriage. He's lying about all sorts of things, and now he makes things up.
Carson and Kasich tried to remain positive and above the fray, addressing problems in the American economy.
Bernie Sanders and people like Hillary Clinton and blame it on the rich. They say those evil rich people, if we take their money, we can solve the problem. It's not the evil rich people. It's the irresponsible evil government.
First thing we have to do is grow the economy. And I know the formula because I was chairman in Washington when we balanced the budget and created so many jobs, and the same we've been able to do in Ohio.
With less than a week to go before the South Carolina primary, the Republican candidates leave the debate energized.
And with polls showing Trump in the lead, much of this may be a battle for second place. And as Iowa demonstrated in this election year, there may be more surprises to come. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Thanks, Gary. Pat, one of the articles I read described the debate as cutthroat.
Well, one of the people who does the polling said the Republicans are destroying each other. What is wrong with them? And I believe Charles Krauthammer was describing it as thermonuclear war. These people have taken the gloves off, and they're hitting, and it's nasty. And You know, what's going to happen, though, these sound bites that come out of these debates will be used by the Democrat against any Republican who's running, and they'll be played over and over again. This isn't what we Democrats say. This is what you Republicans say. And it is terrible for the Republican Party to allow this kind of mayhem to go forward. They just shouldn't do it. And we've got some excellent candidates running, every one of them. They're superb people. Kasich is a superb governor. Jeb Bush, superb governor. The other, Cruz, has been a brilliant scholar and a leader. Rubio, a brilliant leader in the House and legislature in Florida. You go down the line. They are super people, and Ben Carson is one of the most brilliant neurosurgeons in the world. These are outstanding, but they're cutting themselves to pieces, and those of us who think it's time for a change are just appalled at what's going on. John.
Pat, the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast are being hit with snow, sleet, and rain on this President's Day. Up to 4 inches of snow is expected from Philadelphia to New York City, with up to possibly 8 inches in eastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania, and parts of New York. On Saturday, bad weather caused a massive 50-car pileup in Pennsylvania, killing 3 and sending dozens to the hospital. Other states like Kentucky were also hit hard.
It'll always be the elevated surfaces first, the bridges and these ramps. Those are the areas that will always freeze before the rest of the roadway. We've got a lot of salt out on the roads already from all the events last week, so there's a good amount of residue out there.
The highways aren't too bad, but the regular roads, the bigger roads, especially the one out here, it's still pretty slippery.
Valentine's Day brought some of the coldest temperatures on record. Parts of New York and New England saw temperatures as low as 40 below zero. And Pat, I don't think Punxsutawney Phil predicted any of this.
No, he needed a second coat to stand this weather. Telling you, it's cold. I even got my dog in. I mean, that showed how cold it was. I brought little Maggie into the house, and I can't get her inside. She didn't like to come inside, but boy, she came in for that one. She knew it was cold.
I didn't even know it was supposed to snow. Did you? Here?
No, I was surprised this morning when I woke up there, the snow was.
I was still up at midnight, and I opened the door, and it was gorgeous. There was already half an inch.
It's pretty. It's very nice.
Half an inch.
Hey, what's that?